Good evening and welcome to the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers All Candidates Virtual Town Hall, facilitated by OSPI's Chair, Dave Carnegie. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees will remain muted for the duration of the session. To change your personal view of the webinar, click the view icon and select your preferred setting. By registering for this evening's town hall, you were given the opportunity to ask a question of the candidates. Please note that if a question was submitted several ways, but with the same intent, it will be asked once this evening. Please direct all questions regarding Professional Engineers Ontario directly to peo@peo.on.ca. If you have a question about a specific advocacy item, please direct those questions to our advocacy staff at OSPI who work directly with our volunteer task forces. Their contact information can be found on our website, ospe.on.ca. If time permits, there will be two options to be able to ask a question live. First is through our Q&A function. Please submit your question via text in the Q&A box. They will be sent to our staff monitoring tonight's event, and we will read them out loud. If you would prefer to ask the question verbally using your own microphone, please select the raise hand button in the toolbar. Without further delay, it is now my pleasure to introduce the Chair of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, Dave Carnegie.
Good evening, everyone, and again, welcome to OSPI's All Candidates Town Hall. This is an opportunity for you, our members, to hear what your candidates' visions are for your association. I'm coming to you virtually from my home in Kingston, and we are situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And we thank these nations for their care and stewardship over this shared land. OSPI's elections are structured to ensure a turnover of 1/3 of our board members each year, and therefore, there are 4 open positions for a 3-year term. We're pleased to welcome the following 6 candidates running for election: Sandra Ausma, Sarah Dolat-Shahi, John Hazel, Inga Heapsh, Ray Mantha, and Jane Ravenshaw. Welcome, candidates, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to give back to your profession. Each of the candidates will be permitted up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. I will then direct questions to the candidates, and each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to the question. Following the questions period, we will give each candidate up to 1 minute for closing remarks. The order of speakers this evening will begin alphabetical by last name. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to go first with each question asked. Please note that the views and opinions of the candidates do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of OSPI. Now let us begin with opening remarks. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes. Please keep to the time limits as we have a lot of candidates and we want to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to answer the questions, as well as being able to get as many questions as possible from our audience. So the first candidate this evening is Sandra Ausma.
Good evening, and thank you for taking time out of your schedules to join this All Candidates Town Hall. I'd like to start by thanking OSPI for organizing and inviting me to participate this evening, and thank you as well to our moderator this evening, Dave Carnegie, for volunteering to spend his evening with us. I am a chemical engineer by training, and I have graduate degrees in biological engineering and atmosphere. I have over 30 years experience working in sectors, including academic research, both in Canada and Germany, consulting engineering, and government. I retired after 15 years with the Ontario Public Service, where I served in both the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks and the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry. There, I held progressive positions, including technical expert, project manager in a policy shop, and supervisor, leading compliance and inspection teams, along with issuing teams. For over 30 years, I have volunteered. In 2015, my volunteer activities were recognized with an Ontario Women's Directorate Award. I believe strongly in giving back to my profession. I have been engaged in our profession as a volunteer leader for over 10 years. I am a past PEO counselor and vice president. I am currently an OSPE director and have served on a variety of OSPE committees. I am the vice president and fundraising co-chair of the Ontario Professional Engineers Foundation for Education, and I am also a director on the Laurentian School of Engineering Advisory Board. As a professional engineer, it is important that we support both our professional associations through licensure by PEO and membership in OSPE to ensure the future of our profession. I am looking forward to continuing to serve our profession as an OSPE director and finalizing and implementing our progressive and forward-looking strategic plan. Good governance is keystone to the success of our professional associations. I bring with me leadership qualities and my experience serving as a director on engineering-related governance boards. My reputation is as a team builder and problem solver. I do this by building relationships, fostering a respectful environment, listening, working collaboratively, acknowledging contributions, and celebrating our successes. Today, more than ever, we face challenges as a profession and as an association, whether that be relevancy and accountability to Ontario engineers or ensuring that engineers are advocated for and invited to the table when policy decisions are being made with respect to infrastructure, transportation, energy, and other technology-based fields. How we deal with these challenges will most certainly shape our future and the future of engineering in Ontario. I believe to view these challenges as opportunities to continue to grow OSPE and the reputation of engineering in Ontario. Thank you. I look forward to this evening.
Thank you, Sandra. Next up is Sarah Dolachahi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Dolachahi, and I'm a nuclear engineer with a deep commitment to serving our profession. I'm also a mother of 2 daughters, married for 25 years, and a daughter of hardworking immigrant parents. So seeing some of my engineering friends restart their careers due to unrecognized foreign credentials has shaped my passion for advocacy and ensuring engineers receive the recognition and influence they deserve. My career has taken me from being a licensed shift manager running a nuclear power plant to leading the development and implementation of Canada's national strategy for radioactive waste management. As a board member of a small business specializing in home improvements, I also provide strategic leadership while ensuring financial sustainability and risk oversight. I'm passionate about mentoring and inspiring the next generation to pursue engineering and leadership roles. Today, engineers must advocate not only for our profession, but also for Canada's future. OSPE has the potential to position engineers as strategic leaders in key areas like manufacturing, housing, clean energy, and climate change. Yet, many engineers don't see the value of joining OSPE. Within my 3,000-person professional network on LinkedIn, fewer than 1% are members. We need to shift that narrative, showing both individual benefits and OSPE's broader impact on our province as well as our country. I believe my experience, I have 25 years in the industry, will help OSPE empower engineers and amplify our voice. Volunteering for OSPE matters because advocacy and professional development go hand in hand. I want to strengthen OSPE's advocacy, increase membership, and inspire more engineers to take leadership roles, ensuring our profession is heard and recognized at the highest levels. So thank you for the opportunity to run, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up is John Hazel.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks to all the attendees and to OSPE for animating this session. I think it's a great opportunity to allow some thoughtful decisions to be made about the future of OSPE and about the profession in general. My background is kind of well documented in my bio, which has been published. So I wanted to focus my 2 minutes more on my motivation. I come from a telecoms background. I most recently worked at Nokia, where I spent a number of decades working on various types of networks, most recently fiber optic networks. But throughout my career, I've always sought out new experiences for growth and fulfillment. And I've been privileged to enjoy a career that's included collaborative worldwide teams, challenging projects, rapid new technology adoption. However, something was always missing. You know, there's an expression, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and then not giving it. And that resonates very strongly with me. To fill this void, I started volunteering with PEO some time ago. And I discovered a new community of fellow engineers with diverse disciplines, different backgrounds, different experiences, but united by a common goal to serve at a level beyond their day jobs. My contributions to PEO as a volunteer throughout the years were material and rewarding, but now it's time for something new. OSPE's values align very closely with my own, and I think they epitomize the larger obligation of all engineers to unite, to leverage our collective skills and insights, to care for our peers and clients, as well as for the well-being of society, to lead by sharing our insights and serving the needs of our stakeholders so that everyone can prosper. The mathematician Terence Tao has a great story about engineers. It's not a joke, but he was talking about a group of engineers that were reviewing user feedback from a recently opened airport. And the main complaint was the long wait times for the luggage to arrive at the carousel for pickup. So several innovative modifications were done by the engineers that significantly expedited the luggage transit time from the plane to the carousel, but the passengers still complained, even though it was highly optimized. Some clever engineer got together with the peers in that group and came up with a solution to put some distractions and some minor impedances between the gate and the carousel, so it took longer for the passengers to get there. This effectively reduced the wait time, and of course the complaint stopped. So this story to me exemplifies the reframing and creative problem solving that I think I can bring to bear working with my colleagues to drive OSPE's impact going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Inga Heapsch.
Thank you, Dave, and my fellow OSPE members for this opportunity to join the candidates to discuss my qualifications for the OSPE board. My name is Inga Heapsch. I am a mechanical engineer, and I am currently the Vice President of Strategic Development at Canadian Standards Association, or CSA for short. We publish over 3,000 codes and standards, with many used for certification purposes. At CSA, I have supervised up to 500 professionals, including engineers in Canada and the US, and I bring a unique perspective to the table. I have been a PEng for 25 years. I am a female executive leader, a mentor to young engineers, and a mother to 2 daughters, with the oldest in engineering school herself. Just last year, OSPE recognized me with the OPEA Engineering Medal for Management. It was Marilyn Powers who presented me with the award, and she is the one that inspired me to consider to run for the OSPE board. As an immigrant, Canada and the engineering profession afforded me lots of opportunities. To me, giving back to the community is a core part of my identity, and I have been doing so since I was an undergraduate at the University of Toronto. I have served as the alumni ambassador since graduating, and now as the Engineering Faculty Council rep. I also sit on PEO's Strategic Stakeholder Advisory Council and OSPE's EDIA Task Force. Future engineers, like my own daughter, need us to continue to elevate our profession, especially in the current environment. To me, OSPE is the best place to do so. My daily responsibilities at CSA include working with boards and with over 12,000 diverse stakeholders from industry, associations, government, and academia. I offer skills in standards and policy development, member management, compliance, strategy development, advocacy, and implementation. I have worked in and with manufacturing, non-for-profit, and for-profit organizations. As a board member, OSPE would allow me the right platform to contribute to shaping policies and strategic influence for such an important profession as ours, while helping OSPE to advance its strategy and mission. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Inga. Next up is Ray Mantha.
Thanks very much, Dave. Good evening to all of the OSPE membership joining us here virtually for this critical moment in the OSPE journey. To date, some 25 years in the making. My name is Ray Mantha, and it has been my distinct pleasure for the past 3 years to serve along with my colleagues on the OSPE board in listening to you, the OSPE members, to government, and to business leaders, and in fact, to all Ontarians, to understand their current and future needs so as to chart the best path forward for the entire engineering community in making Ontario the best jurisdiction in the world to reside. I have long believed that engineers play a pivotal role in the lives of all Ontarians. However, we are often invisible. The analogy I like to use often is comparing engineers in society to oxygen, i.e., no one ever thinks of the air they breathe until there is a lack of or quality issue. This is a particularly relevant example, as engineers can and do play an important role in mitigating, preventing, and enhancing air quality. I strongly believe that we have a voice and should express our professional opinions and views to the decision makers so as to earn their recognition and a seat at the table. We often play the role of canary in the coal mine. We should not only identify the problem, but more, we must bring solutions. OSPE was created and exists to represent you and advocate for you, the engineer. We are not the licensing body, and as such, we focus entirely on you, your needs, your personal growth and development to achieve the outcomes I raised earlier. I have decades of board and governance leadership experience across the spectrum of the Canadian scene. I want to continue my mission of ensuring that engineers have a voice that is heard, understood, and leads to the best outcome for all Ontarians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Jane Ravenshaw.
Good evening, everyone. I know it's late after a long day to be sitting and listening to people talk, so really appreciate your attention. I'm happy to be here tonight to discuss my candidacy for the OSPE board for another term. I'm currently on the board along with a couple of other people that are here tonight. The reason why I would like to go for a second term on the OSPE board is because I'd really like to be able to finish off some of the work that I started in the first term. I'm Jane Ravenshaw, and my bio is also there for you to read in detail. I think what's most relevant is my background is really in software engineering, and most of the work that I've done in the last 20 years has been all related to software, analytics, and now artificial intelligence. So one of the more underrepresented groups at OSPE is the software engineering piece, because traditionally we have never had to have a stamp, or it hasn't been really that relevant to have that PEng accreditation beside our names in order to be employed. So, but as time has gone on in terms of what is required in the world, there is a lot related to the sort of the software end of things. If we include AI, data analytics, quantum, like all of the great changes that we're seeing every day in the world are done by a lot of engineers who maybe haven't become members of the PEO. And so there's a great opportunity for OSPE to be there for this group. And one of the things within the first term that we've been able to do is stand up an AI working group within OSPE, and this is just new this year. And it's something where we can develop some opinions and advocacy on our artificial intelligence. So I'd really like to be able to continue that. I was also part of the strategy committee where we developed the 5-year plan that you can now see on the OSPE website. And that is something that I was a part of developing, and I would definitely like to see that through in my next term. The third thing that I'm really interested in doing is continuing the work on breaking down some of the barriers for people to be in the engineering profession. So whether it's minorities or women, we still do not have sort of an equal playing field within the engineering profession. We're much better, but we would like to continue making sure that we break down those barriers so that engineering is a field that everyone feels that they can participate in. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Dave.
Thank you, Jane. So now we're going to move on to the lightning round. It's not actually called that, but I'm going to call that tonight because each of the candidates will have a minute to respond to a series of questions that come from common questions that we get from our membership. And I believe some of the questions have actually been submitted beforehand as well. So we're going to begin with Sarah. And the question is, what is motivating you to join the OSPI board?
Great, thanks, Dave. And actually, I love lightning rounds, and I do bring a lot of energy, so I'll be talking really fast. I am passionate about strengthening the engineering profession's influence in policy, business, and society. Engineers, as most of you talked about, are the core of solving Canada's biggest challenges, and Ontario's challenges, from energy security to housing, infrastructure, or climate change. But our voices are often underrepresented. And I liked how Raymond said, sometimes we look even invisible. So the recent US tariffs are causing significant challenges for Ontario and Canada, and engineers are essential in addressing them. So yet again, we are not at the table, not invited, and underrepresented. Through my work, I have seen it firsthand how engineers are often underrepresented from crucial policy discussions or lack the empowerment to contribute effectively. So I want to help change that by ensuring engineers are engaged, recognized, and actively shaping those decisions that impact our industries and economy. In addition, as I noted in my introduction, I would also like to increase the OSPI membership, since the bigger our voice, the more influence we can have.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up is John.
All right, so in his book, Drive, author Daniel Pink identifies autonomy, mastery, and purpose as the key pillars that drive true motivation. And I think all of us experience these throughout our careers, but oftentimes there's a higher need. It's been expressed through the sort of lack of voice and substance of engineers making critical policy decisions. And I think there's an urgent need now, as the environment is changing so rapidly, to increase that focus. In parallel, as PEO is evolving to a more singular focus on regulation, the Overton window for OSPI is becoming bigger, and there's an opportunity to grow and have a stronger impact by taking over and focusing on some of the issues that were sort of distributed across multiple teams with too many players, too many cooks. So I think now is the time to focus on that laser concentration to deal with these specific issues. I personally am motivated by solving multidimensional challenges, working with others to come up with collaborative solutions. I'm a believer in lifelong learning. I like to seek new opportunities to collaborate and solve problems. And I think all of these are exactly what's needed right now. I have a track record of applying my past experience to new challenges, and I believe I could bring value to OSPI in furthering its mission.
Thank you, John. Next up is Inga.
Thank you, Dave. As I mentioned earlier, I also feel very fortunate regarding the opportunities I've been given in my engineering profession. The younger generations are really looking to us. They are looking for mentors, and at times, as busy as we are with our jobs, it is very difficult for them to get access to us. Okay, so as part of the OSPI discussions of how we can serve the engineering community, it's the students that are already coming up and how can we actually get to them a little bit earlier to afford them the opportunities to start participating in activities to become future OSPI members. So outside of this, they're looking for us to pave the way. This is, as other candidates discussed, a very important time, a potentially challenging economic landscape, in Canada and how this will shape their future careers. So that is really my main motivation, as well as, having that whole ability that I'm bringing to the table to contribute in the way to advance the strategy and to make sure that we're building a stronger future for the next coming after us. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. Next up is Ray.
Thanks, Dave. I started my involvement with the engineering profession back at the University of Ottawa, where and when I was elected to represent the civil engineering students on the National CSCE Student Advisory Committee. I remained involved in my chapter in North Bay, where I continue to reside, leading Students' Night, the well-known Engineers' Day, as well as chapter chair, all while serving on numerous PEO committees over the years. Prior to serving the past 3 years on the OSPI board, 2 of which as your treasurer, I was member of the Public Policy Committee at Engineers Canada for 10 years, serving as its chair for 8 years. This committee was responsible for the creation of national position statements used to lobby the federal government on such matters as climate change, quality-based selection for engineering consulting services, to name but 2. I want to continue my long history involvement in our profession by representing you, the OSPI member. There are many challenges ahead, and I believe I bring the right experience and focus to meet them head on.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Jane.
I think I talked a little bit in my intro on why I wanted to continue on with the OSPI board, but definitely where I think I can add the most value as a board member and serve OSPI the best is, I think, through my background in both technology, software specifically, and in entrepreneurship. So I started my own company in 2014 and was able to grow that to be, very successful in the software space. I also have been the CEO of a small data company, as well as COO of a marketing agency. So I've had some pretty senior positions around this space in terms of software. And I think with that leadership, we can have more ability to advocate for growth and support within the government for more funding towards AI research. Canada used to be a leader in this space, and we've definitely slipped. So there's a real opportunity for engineers to have an opinion on how we can take our proper place in the world in developing this type of technology.
Thank you, Jane. And next up is Sandra.
Thank you. I love the work that OSPI does and the passion for engineering with which it advocates for the profession and infuses in all of it does. I believe the work we do is of critical importance to the engineering community, future engineers, and the Canadian economy. I have been honored to serve and am enjoying my first term on the OSPI board, and I want to continue to contribute and to grow OSPI and the work that we do. I believe strongly in giving back to the engineering community, bringing value to the board of directors, participating on committees, and advocating for OSPI membership. I'm one of the few directors that has also served on PEO Council. PEO, its activities and actions frequently become part of our discussions and at the council table. And as a past councillor, I am able to bring a unique perspective to our meetings. Thank you, and back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Sandra. All right, the lightning round continues. The next question for our nominees is at this year's OSPI AGM, we will be launching our new 5-year strategic plan. Where do you envision our organization in 5 years? And what key steps do you believe we need to take to achieve that vision? And so this round, we begin with John Hazel.
Thanks, Dave. I mean, in many ways, OSPI is the mouse that roars, punching above its weight. It was mentioned earlier, the percentage of engineering, whether they're graduates or licensed professionals that are members of OSPI is lower than it needs to be. Yet OSPI still does a lot of great work. And I think the current 5-year plan is building on past success. In my view, I think the key first step here is to increase stakeholder engagement, starting with having more Ontario engineers as part of OSPI. This, combined with partnering with other like-minded organizations that have intersecting objectives, will give OSPI a stronger voice and hence more influence. Once you've made headway for these initial steps, the next phase would be to pave the way to strengthening OSPI's position as a source where the press and politicians can go to get trusted independent advice relating to engineering and technology, particularly around some of the pressing urgent issues that are already in the public discourse. In addition to publishing white papers, OSPI could look at consolidating other research and policy publications from academic, commercial, or government sources to become a provider of intelligence and analytics. OSPI can also help the government to identify, invest in, support, and value the needed engineering disciplines to keep Ontario strong. OSPI can also help focus on keeping engineers up to speed by using different vehicles and communities to provide continuous learning aligned with PEO's peak guidelines for career growth and mentorship. Most of these are already part of the OSPI plan. I think the challenge will be to decompose these into action plans that are progressive and incremental and can be achieved in the timeline. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, John. Next up is Inga.
Thank you, Dave. So I will add to this. Just to start, I see that OSPI has done a really great job trying to already reach out to talk about the strategic plan that has been assembled. And that is really, really crucial as part of a change management process, getting people on board earlier on. Now OSPI is going to be moving into implementing these initiatives as per planned under the board's governance. And of course, successes will be measured. So where do I see OSPI in the future? I really do believe that OSPI can achieve an even greater presence in Ontario to represent the engineers. By doing so, they can further enhance the value that they bring to a greater number of engineers who will end up joining as new members. So doing this, advocating, communicating is going to be very key. What I see as a challenge where OSPI needs to start, just like any other organization, and this is probably a known fact, is that to make a greater impact, how do we actually do this with limited resources? Okay, so prioritization of these initiatives definitely is key, but also an encouragement to keep involving the membership in the implementation in these initiatives and these tasks as they start, being defined. Of course, once again, performance will be measured to emphasize the value and hence the importance to keep communicating these successes of the initiatives, educating the government, the rest of the engineering community as to how OSPI continues to contribute.
Thank you, Inga. Next up is Ray.
Okay, Dave. OSPI has listened carefully to you, the OSPI member, and scanned the world around us in developing this 5-year strategic plan. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. Engage, educate, enable, empowering the engineering community. In 5 years, OSPI will be a vitally important player in moving Ontario forward by being your professional voice. We need to engage more often with you, the professional, and partner with key stakeholders and decision makers. We need to provide the necessary learning tools and opportunities for you to realize your full potential through readily accessible avenues such as our Learning Academy. We need to provide you, the professional, with meeting opportunities within our profession through events such as the OSPI Engineering Conference or regional events where you can and will advocate our professional and considered point of view. We must grow and support the OSPI Learning Academy so as to meet your training and development needs for peak licensing requirements for you and your employer. We must have a laser focus on continuing the growth and health of the engineering community, our lifeblood.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Jane.
Thanks, Dave. I really liked a couple of comments that John had in his opening answer to the question, because he went first. I do agree that we need to get more engineers involved with OSPI. And luckily, we do not have the restrictions that the PEO has, where everybody has to be a PEng. So the actual number of engineers that we can involve in OSPI is much, much greater. And so this vision really comprehends a broader look at the engineering community. And I think that will definitely help us get a seat at the table. And that's what I'm most excited about. Being able to have some of these engineers who are not sort of in more of the traditional fields of engineering, being able to have a voice within the government, within society, getting them to have a seat at the table. Part of that, I think, comes from addressing things like the right to practice versus the right to title, that we've talked a lot about, removing barriers for engineers to be able to move across Canada or to come from other provinces. Getting engineers recognized in important positions where they're decision makers in their companies. These are all things that we need to address. And a lot of that comes from educating engineers themselves and also educating companies and the management in companies about what engineers have to offer.
Thank you, Jane. Next up is Sandra.
Back to me. So a lot of what I'm going to say is probably what others have said. And I believe that OSPI is already a well-respected advocate of engineering within Ontario. Where I see one of our challenges is in membership growth. And what I envision is engineers clamoring to become members in 5 years. With membership growth, we could do more. Our new strategic plan focuses more on the engineer as an individual through standing up for rights of engineers, the value of engineering services, and providing training to empower engineers in career growth, skills enhancements, and leadership opportunities. These are all areas where members ask for support from OSPI, and I'm optimistic that this change in approach will appeal broadly to engineers at all career levels and attract more members. The next steps as an organization is the development of a sound operational plan by staff and with input from our membership, in which will be presented to and discussed at the board level to ensure it has the needed components and is adequately resourced to be successful. Appropriate timed metrics need to be developed and to evaluate progress before the operational plan can be approved at the board level. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Sandra. Next up is Sarah.
I guess going last means most of the points that I was going to mention have been mentioned. However, I would say that I see the same thing as OSPI membership has grown in the next 5 years. I see that, and OSPI is stronger, more influential organization that policymakers and industries actively seek for expertise. So OSPI has done a great job, but I do think that there's still a little bit of a room for improvement. So one of the first steps would be to achieve this vision is growing membership by showing value to individuals while also demonstrating OSPI's collective value to Ontario and Canada in these uncertain times. By increasing our presence at the policy-making and decision-making events, I find OSPI can bring solutions to the decision makers while advocating more effectively for engineers. So again, we must position ourselves as leaders in shaping those key issues like economic development, energy, housing, infrastructures. And that way, OSPI will be recognized as not just amplifying the voice of engineers, which is really important, but also an essential organization that helps solve those issues for Ontario and Canada.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, the lightning round continues. In 1 minute or less, your next question is, as a board member, you'd be a brand ambassador of OSPI. How would you personally encourage more people to join OSPI? And we'll start with Inga this time.
Thank you, Dave. So I want to open up that I would be a very good brand ambassador. And a big part of being an ambassador is the enthusiasm that you have for the organization and for their mission. And here it would be for OSPI, encouraging folks to join. I've got a lot of enthusiasm for sure. I do believe in leading by examples, but I do want to start that when I speak to people who about OSPI, who are still not yet members, they still do not understand the difference between PO and OSPI, which is, you know, indicates there's quite a lot of work to do. They don't understand this one's a regulator, one's a voluntary member-based association that advances the interests of the engineering profession. There are so many benefits that OSPI offers that we need to continue to educate folks about and the value that it brings. So personally, how would I start with leading by example? Tapping into my own personal networks, which I already started. At CSA, as I mentioned, I work with over 12,000 stakeholders and staff, majority of them being engineers. We took the time to meet with OSPI to learn about task forces. I'd like to report that 2 of our staff members have and are joining the task forces to make sure that, there's more involvement going to be coming in. And exchange of information in recruitment for another task force member out of a different organization. CSA is also discussing with OSPI how we could enhance the OSPI Engineering Academy for its members, as well as promote what OSPI offers, as well as personally, I'm promoting how to participate with me in EngCons, webinars, attending all sorts of other events that OSPI organizes in order to, expose them to OSPI. My other network of U of T Faculty of Engineering and alumni offers an opportunity to build a greater presence with students and graduates on campus, and then take those learnings to apply those best practices to other schools. I also have working relationships with Engineers Canada that can be tapped into. I know that obviously OSPI is very much close with them, but that's also an opportunity. And on a continuing basis, the engineers that I mentor, they're being exposed to my OSPI message, which is get involved, build your networks, and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. Next up is Ray.
Thanks, Dave. I always have and continue to hold my involvement in the engineering profession proudly, and in particular, being a member of OSPI. This means that I share one-on-one or while speaking to a group with any and all that will listen, that OSPI is an engineer-based organization that exists to represent, to educate, and to advocate for the engineering community on our behalf. I'm always interested in continuing education and lifelong learning. As an engineer, OSPI offers a quality vehicle to assist us in attaining that goal. As was mentioned, I also often denote what most in the engineering community simply don't understand, that being the differing roles between PEO and OSPI. PEO's one and only mandate is to protect the public, this through licensing, while OSPI's mandate is to be your advocate, in fact, for the entire engineering community. OSPI is moving steadily, making strides in this direction. We need to persevere as it is essential in delivering our mission.
Thank you, Ray. Next over to Jane.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to just add a little bit to Ray's comments. When he talks about the engineering community, I think that that part is what is key, that we do represent the entire engineering community, and we are not the licensing agency. So we have a different mandate than the PEO. And to Inga's point, that hasn't been clear. I think that's something that we've tried to bring to life in our 5-year strategy by changing things. For example, allowing an engineer that doesn't have a PEng to actually come onto the board for the first time. These are things that we are changing to appeal to the broader engineering community. We still think, obviously, the PEng is the bread and butter of OSPI. We are not trying to alienate the PEng, but we do want to broaden the mandate to include all of the engineering community, because with greater numbers, we will have greater opportunity for advocacy. We will be a more robust organization, because it is very important that we see this membership growth. And if you look at that total market and opportunity for growth, there is much more opportunity in the broader engineering community for growth. So that is what I would like to advocate for, or continue to advocate for as we try to grow our membership base.
Thank you, Jane. Next up is Sarah.
So I plan to actually leverage my platform on social media. I do have a STEM social media account that a lot of engineers, younger generation, are following. And so it's STEM focused already. As well as I mentioned, I have 3,000 plus contacts on LinkedIn, which recently, when I joined or wanted to, get some support with regards to this OSPI election, I realized less than 1% were members. And so again, there is a huge opportunity to bring in or educate, as Ray and Jane already talked about the differences, and I think Inga has pointed as well. So I often present at schools, conferences, mentor young engineers. So I have many opportunities to encourage and influence others to join. Additionally, I think we do need to amplify the benefits and increase the opportunities for networking, shadowing, mentoring, professional development in a way that engineers would feel actually left out if they're not part of it. So I think there's a little bit of that elevating the organization's status and showing the unique advantages that comes with being a member. And then through that, giving that leadership opportunities, industry influence, and career advancement that a lot of younger engineers, and also actually mid-career engineers like myself, are looking as well. So that's really how I see we can make an impact.
Thank you, Sarah. And over to John to close this question.
All right, so my thoughts are closely aligned with Sarah's points. I see that for me personally, the value of my OSPI membership has been twofold. First of all, part of being a community of diverse engineers, and also benefiting from OSPI's efforts to amplify the voice and enhance the public perception of engineers. But for too long, the question has been, what do I get out of an OSPI membership? What's in it for me? And I think we need to change the conversation, move it away from this transactional cost-benefit perception into something that's greater than that. If OSPI is seen as being an advocate and a winner and making effective contributions, that's a winning team, and people want to be part of a winning team. So I think celebrating these successes and publishing them to the broader community, not just to OSPI members through magazines and social media, but through other means, would spread the message and create the sense that OSPI is a winning team. One interesting conundrum is that as OSPI succeeds in improving the perception of all engineers benefit, even those who are not OSPI members, right? Because people will say, hey, you're an engineer, you're an OSPI member. So that's kind of a free pass in that, you can reap some of the benefits of OSPI's activities without actually being a member. And I think we want to kind of create an environment where people feel that that's not the way to go, right? They want to be part of that. They want to contribute to that. not just as a beneficiary, but as an active participant. So I think framing OSPE's successes and plans in that light, I think is key to the message that's been shared before by tapping into networks and publicizing that OSPE is kind of the place to be. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. And I have to apologize. I miss Sandra. You're on the page break. So I've adjusted things so I don't miss you again. I'm like the anchor man. I'm just reading. Sorry. So last word goes to Sandra.
The all-important page break. So I'm proud to be an engineer and an OSPE member. And while membership is voluntary in OSPE, I believe that engineers have an obligation and responsibility to support OSPE and our engineering advocacy work through membership. For those of us that are professional engineers, it would be respective of the value of OSPE membership, respective of the value that OSPE membership brings to the profession if there was a combined fee that it included with our license renewal. But there isn't. But maybe it's a possibility to pursue in the future again. Cost of an OSPE membership is less than $1 a day. As I have continuously done since joining OSPE, I will share and talk about OSPE's program successes and how we have influenced change in policy. I will also share the economic benefits of membership that result from discounts and savings on services and products that more than recover membership costs. To me, it's a no-brainer. I also challenge engineers to become members and remind them that OSPE advocates on their behalf and that OSPE successes are not possible without members and volunteers. Lastly, I'm proud to say that one of the most recent individuals that I've convinced to join OSPE is my granddaughter, who's now become a student OSPE member. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. So our next question is, what would you say is the board's role versus the role of management? And where should the board's focus its time and energy? And we start this round with Ray.
All right. I hope people know this. The board should and must focus on oversight, on strategic direction and policy formulation, while management is responsible for the day-to-day operations and implementing those policies. The board should not be in the kitchen. The board only has one employee, that being the CEO. The board serves, as we've talked about, as an external advocate or ambassador. The board should take a stronger role on big matters that could have a major negative impact on the organization or where there are strong financial stakes. The board must be future-looking, helping to develop the long-term vision and the strategic plan. The board must use its experience and contact base to identify and monitor trends inside and outside of house. The board needs to play a role in legal matters, and we have to support our CEO. So it's a generic answer, but it applies to this board like it applies to every other board.
Thank you, Ray. Over to Jane. Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Ray's got it. Like, we've been really educated in terms of what is the role of a board member versus an employee of OSPE, and they're quite different. The only thing I would like to add to Ray's comments is what is really important for a board member to do and for the board overall to do is to make sure that just because you're not involved in the day-to-day doesn't mean that you aren't looking at the results of the organization. Like, you need to have some really key metrics that you're measuring the organization on, and you're paying very, very close attention to those, whether they're financial metrics or membership numbers or, all of these numbers that we are looking at. And we do set the strategic direction. We're not saying how to go about doing it and who should be doing what job, but it doesn't mean that you're not really managing things in an oversight way. So I would say the most important thing to focus on is what are those measurements, and because you sort of get what you measure.
Thank you, Jane. Sandra?
I don't really have a lot to add. our role in the board is to establish the strategic direction and the policies of OSPI and to work with the management team to identify priorities, establish goals and objectives, finding resources and allocating funds to support decisions that need to be made around the strategy and making sure that it aligns with the organization's goals and those of the memberships. And that might be something that we haven't added so far, is that we need to make sure that our activities and that of the board and the organization are aligned with the needs of the membership. We have the responsibility as a board to ask challenging questions of the management and to monitor the execution of the strategic plan. And conversely, the role of the management is to understand the strategy and develop actions and direct resources to translate the strategies and policies into actual actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Sarah?
So all of the above, I would say, definitely the board would be working on the business rather like, being in the business, as mentioned before. But having served on the board myself, I understand the importance of staying strategic rather than getting caught in the daily operations. But it's also critical for board members to stay, I would say, informed of the socio-political issues, technological advancements, policy changes that could be affecting our profession. And that way, the board should really be adding value to the management or the CEO by guiding the management towards the right priorities and keeping OSPI relevant, adaptable, and effective in advocating for engineers. So that's really what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
Yeah, just a couple of quick points to add. I mean, there's the underlying fiduciary duties of any board member. That's the duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience that underlie the fundamentals of the role. So translating that into some specifics, many of the other points are well aligned, right? Creating and supporting OSPI's vision, mission, and purpose, developing a strategic plan, creating working groups, providing financial oversight, including audits where needed, to strike committees to focus on specific actions and goals, and to act as ambassadors to grow membership, increase outreach, and partner with collaborator organizations. I mean, really, as was said, the main difference is the board provides guidance and oversight while staff and management implement and execute.
Thank you, John. And over to Inga for the last word.
So again, I mean, as somebody mentioned, if you go last, some of the answers go, but somebody had mentioned legal aspects, for the board. It's going to be even more important for the board to make sure that the management has identified the right upcoming risks to, implementing the strategy, or as they arise, to make sure that we are mitigating any sort of liabilities. And also make sure that OSPI has the right resources to execute those plans. Board members have their own wonderful expertise to contribute here. They've got a lot of wonderful experience by participating in other organizations at various levels, even as part of their previous employment. So again, I just really wanted to add that any sort of addition of those expertise to provide guidance is really, really much needed.
Thank you, Inga. So the next question in our lightning round is, in your view, what is the most challenging aspect of being a good board member? And we start this question with Jane.
Well, this is a great follow-up question to the previous question. And I think the biggest challenge, we've all said what you're supposed to do, which is to be, strategic and not work in the business, but, work on the business, as the saying goes. That can be easier said than done. And that's probably where some of the conflicts arise. It's all fine and good if all the metrics are being reached and everything's smooth sailing and we can all say, wow, well done, organization's going really well. But when things go not so well and metrics maybe aren't being achieved, or there's problems or unforeseen risks that come up, it's pretty easy to slip into that problem-solving operational role. And that is the most challenging thing, to go, okay, how far do we take this conversation? How far do we work, on this problem without becoming, without becoming operational versus strategic? So I think that's always the challenge, and that's why it's emphasized that the board is there, for oversight and not to run the business. And it is challenging sometimes to not get into the weeds, so to speak.
Thank you, Jane. Over to Sandra.
Ditto. We as engineers, we love to solve problems. So occasionally around the table, we as directors get into the weeds and provide possible operational solutions to challenge we see the organization having. So we all need to be self-aware and have the self-discipline to redirect our energy, recognize the line between operational and strategic, and elevate the discussion back to the strategic board level. And this is one of the aspects that I find personally challenging. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Next up is Sarah.
So similarly, I would say the biggest challenge would be of being a good member is balancing the strategic oversight with the need to staying hands-off in the day-to-day operations. I would say a good board member must provide the guidance without that micromanaging that was discussed already, but ensuring accountability still and advocating for the organization and keeping the members' interest at heart. It's not that sometimes it's difficult, some decisions, it may be best for OSPI, but it's not the easiest choice, for instance. So that's some of the areas. And in addition, as a board member, you don't want to be a hindrance or a bottleneck to management. There are many times that, good guidance, but can come with a cost or time delays, that type of stuff. So you want to make sure that as a board member, you're thoughtful of that as well, that you're not slowing down the management or not a hindrance to them.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
I mean, based on my experience, it's really all about striking the appropriate balance, right? As Sandra alluded to, right? It's sometimes it's difficult. You want to dive in there, especially when you have a strategic plan that identifies a variety of goals with diverse stakeholders, right? You want to get in there, get it all done, boil the ocean, and then you end up getting kind of distracted and bogged down. So you have to kind of back out of that and really rely on management to help you to do the translation of those high-level goals into specific action plans that incrementally contribute to various outcomes, and identifying tangible intermediate milestones, and then as a board member providing oversight to that. At the other extreme, you don't want to fixate on a single element of the strategic plan, grasping for that low-hanging fruit just to get a quick win that can't be sustained over time. So you really have to strike a balance between those two dangerous extremes, and just be conscious that you're not drifting towards one way or the other. Rely on your colleagues, work collaboratively with management to make sure that doesn't happen. I think we need to focus on what can be done in a reasonable timeline with the available resources while still building for the future. And I think a well-structured board is going to achieve that.
Thank you, John. Over to Inga.
What I want to add to the discussion that's been taking place is I also see a challenging aspect in seeking, listening, and balancing the diverse input of members, stakeholders, and other board members to reach a consensus on a decision. Okay, and why that's key is everybody's voice counts, but people have different needs. They've got different opinions, and guess what comes in here is a consensus is not 100% unanimity. It really is an agreement of how do we move forward with some kind of a solution because we need to move forward, okay? And what's key in this process is to keep focusing on core values of the organization.
Thank you, Inga. And over to Ray for the last word.
Thanks. And much has been said, but the board member must be able to navigate conflicting priorities, as we've heard, to manage and encourage diverse perspectives so that the decisions are always in the best interest of OSPI while maintaining ethical standards and fostering effective communications. The board member must be all in for the meetings, i.e. come to the board meetings fully prepared to participate in the discussions, to ask the difficult questions, and sometimes played devil's advocate, all in an effort to obtain the best possible outcome. Always on the table are balancing competing interests, as we've heard. The stakeholder needs, our various stakeholder needs, the short-term versus the long-term goals, the financial versus the non-financial goals. It's critical that we listen to diverse perspectives. Listening is an important, critical characteristic of a board member. All of this while maintaining a very high level of integrity and ethics. We must identify and manage the potential risks, financial, reputational, and legal. We are all, as board members, we are all accountable for the governance of OSPI. So critically important role.
Thank you, Ray. So we're on to our next question, and some of you have touched on this one already, but this is an opportunity to perhaps expand. There continues to be confusion over the competing roles of OSPI and PEO, especially amongst the chapter network events. How can we bring clarity to this? And we begin this round with Sandra.
Thanks, Dave. Sure, I get it. It's a great and fun things to offer chapter members activities and presentations that appeal to engineers and can possibly tick off a box on their CPD requirements. I believe that OSPI as an organization is doing what it can. Our CEO attends council meetings and our senior staff have a good relationship with PEO senior staff. We have meetings with council. As part of our board approved strategy, OSPI is having a more active presence in areas outside the GTA to promote OSPI and clarify the differing roles. Until council and chapter leadership have clarity and understanding, the confusion is going to continue. I've come to the conclusion that part of the solution is through grassroots action. For those of us who are PENGs, we are members of chapters. We may not be active, but we are definitely all members. And so I challenge OSPI members and OSPI directors to attend chapter events, run for chapter leadership positions so that we can affect change from within. I also challenge past OSPI directors and OSPI volunteers to run for council and be part of the solution. I think that, at this point, this is the most effective way to further that understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Next up is Sarah.
I fully agree with Sandra, but I would also say, because of that confusion, there needs to be a comprehensive communication campaign that needs to go out, not only to advocate for instance, OSPI. I think it's important to also mention the PENG and the PEO so that there is that distinction when we're discussing it. So there's a need for key messages that it's easily transferable to a number of people. And I really do believe that we do need to empower our members, OSPI members, to become ambassadors, similar to what Sandra was saying, spreading the message, but having those key messages, because it's sometimes difficult to just ask the engineers to communicate, especially if communication is not one of our maybe strongest skills. But if we have the messages ready, if we have those communication campaign and the distinctions are made, I think a lot of people are willing to be those ambassadors that we need in order to do that distinction.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
Yeah, the question was interesting, right? The complementary versus competitors. I think there's a role for both. That's not well understood. It's been a historical problem, partly driven by the overlapping goals that have caused some confusion and duplication. The PEO chapters predate OSPI, and they've had a historical track record of performing, what should be OSPI functions, and that hasn't fully been transitioned yet. One of the 15 recommendations of the Caton report was to trigger PEO to consider if chapters play a role in delivering the function as a regulator. And I don't think that's been fully answered or implemented yet. So ongoing discussion is definitely needed. Some of the examples of past PEO chapter events that I was involved in were STEM outreach, technical talks, networking events, none of which directly align with a purely regulatory mandate. So I think there's an opportunity to focus these discussions with PEO to continue to nudge along the transition of responsibility of non-regulatory activities to OSPI, and really to look to leveraging the existing chapter system to kind of deliver on both goals, right? It doesn't make sense for OSPI to kind of create its own parallel chapter system when there's such a tight alignment between the two objectives. I think if we're creative, we can look for a way to leverage the chapters to deliver both fronts with clear delineation between OSPI events and PEO events.
Thank you, John. Next up is Inga.
Okay, so I will agree with some points and add a little bit more. Sandra talked already about how OSPI is working with PO to keep clarifying and coordinating any gray areas regarding roles and responsibilities. I too sat on a few focus groups from PO where members, participants were questioning, why is PO doing this? Perhaps this should go to OSPI. So this seems to, to be continuing. Sarah talked about the communication campaign. We have to do this in various ways, multiple times to reach people, because it's, even, just looking at myself, I had to do, a little bit of a study, pay attention, in the beginning. Also, it was mentioned to make sure that we are saying how the organizations actually work together, because we still both need each other, and there is, a relationship there. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to PO for decoupling, or whoever did it, and I apologize for not knowing, decoupling the membership invoice. So when you're paying for your PO dues, you're not longer, I've been informed we're not going to be tacking on the OSPI dues, and that's already going to be helping. Anyways, just keep focusing on the OSPI membership. What are we offering here, and what does PO do? So, to continue to communicate that.
Thank you, Inga. Next up is Ray.
Okay, I think most of it has been said. I've long been a chapter member in North Bay, and I really enjoy the fellowship, the learning opportunities. Everything that the chapter has provided, I think, has been first class. It just doesn't reside within the function and responsibilities of PEO, the regulator. I hope chapters will continue their long-held role in the future, but I think all of us need to understand that PEO cannot continue to have chapters within their sphere of responsibility. PEO's one and only mandate, of course, to protect the public interest. Governments in at least 2 other provinces have recently been very clear on making this distinction and have mandated the separation of duties, responsibilities, and activities. We should be looking to them as an example of how they are making that clear and distinct decision. OSPI is moving steadily, making strides in asserting this distinction. We need to persevere, as it's essential in delivering our mission.
Thank you, Ray. And the last word goes to Jane.
Totally agree with everything Ray said. There's been so much discussion in this area because it is an area of conflict where the chapters are still with the PEO, but clearly that isn't the role. But there's some historical precedents and desire to keep things as they are. It's sort of human nature to not want that change. But in saying that, I would say over the last 3 years, there has been considerable improvement, I think, in the relationship between OSPI and the PEO at the organizational level, like at the working level. I feel that there's just a lot more discussions happening. There's been meetings that have gone on to discuss this, and I do think that we will see some changes in the next little while. I mean, change is hard, but I think, for the most part, people agree as to what the ideal situation would be. It's a matter of how do you execute to get there, which is always challenging.
Thank you, Jane. So on to the next question, and we're going to start with Sarah on this one. And it is, in our current times of economic turbulence, are there particular issues that OSPI should be more engaged on?
It's definitely very interesting times. So during the times of economic turbulence that I would say we are in right now, OSPI, we do need to focus on supporting job security and employment opportunities for engineers. This includes providing networking opportunities, hosting job fairs, offering career counseling to help engineers facing job insecurity. And some of that is, it has to do with the tariffs that are coming. Additionally, I would say OSPI should advocate for infrastructure investments that can stimulate job creation, provide new opportunities for engineers in critical sectors such as energy, construction, manufacturing. Another key area for the professional development, OSPI should offer programs to upskill and reskill engineers, especially with the rise of emerging technologies like AI. And I know OSPI does some of that, but I think there's more that could be done. And then mental health resources, entrepreneurship support, and collaboration advocacy are also other areas that I think OSPI could support in these turbulence environments. And finally, I would say, getting back to the policy and my passion of being an advocate in the policies, policy initiatives such as tax incentives or grants for engineering projects, which could drive, again, job growth, infrastructure improvements, and technological advancements, and having that job security for engineers.
Thank you, Sarah. John.
Yeah, I looked at this question really from a Ontario society perspective, looking at how OSPI can work with the engineer membership and non-members as well, hopefully as they come on board, to address some of the big ticket items. And for me, there's three, and luckily OSPI is already heavily engaged in these. So the three are sustainability, climate change, and the digital future. I think these issues have the potential to have the greatest impact to society, and as such represent an important opportunity for OSPI to contribute its expertise, knowledge, and guidance. As trade policies move more towards isolationism, sustainable local sourcing becomes critical to secure the availability of food, manufacturing goods, everything else. Adapting to climate change, we've seen the wildfires and the more intense storms, and the need to harden infrastructure against that. That's a discussion that needs to be had, and another potential opportunity for OSPI to guide policy. Cybersecurity, as was alluded to by Jane, is a key area. Same with AI. Attacks on critical network infrastructure and disinformation campaigns are increasing the threat. So as engineers, we can help society to protect against those. We have seen a little bit of policy work around AI. Bill 194 in Ontario and Bills C26 and 27 federally. But these are still very, very early stage. And I think there's an opportunity here where OSPI can pull up a chair, sit at the table, and provide critical guidance to society as it navigates these complexities.
Thank you, John. Inga?
So, obviously there are projections, as we've been talking, of potential macroeconomic environment worsening, potentially, creating recession conditions, and that might affect some of the sectors. Of course, at the end, we won't know where this will end up and how the government might be stepping in, to assist some of these sectors. However, what's important is, I guess, what we would call emergency preparedness, right? Could OSPI be prepared, and I know they will, to help engineers who might be affected in those sectors to pivot, okay? Pivot to new, career transitions, or even, apply their skills in a new industry. And again, there's a lot of tools that OSPI already offers, but just something to pay attention here, for OSPI to keep advocating for the new sectors, that actually do need engineers. And again, keep observing, where will the government go with this? What exactly will be happening? So we are prepared for, any sort of turbulence that might come our way.
Thank you, Inga. Over to Ray.
Thanks, Dave. We're small but mighty, but we can't be everything to all people. So we have to pick our lane. And the importance of partnering is critical with business, government, and other leaders in the province has never been greater. The perfect example of this is OSPI's participation in the Ontario Business and Trade Leadership Coalition. There are 27 members, and OSPI is invited to be a member of that coalition to tackle challenges posed by rising international protectionism and the threats of terrorists. This group is committed to championing innovative, business-driven solutions, advocating for forward-thinking government policies, and reinforcing Ontario's role as a global leader amid threats of tariffs. We must clearly denote the engineering community's position and offerings to assist in battling in this ever-changing environment. Sandra and his team of Paula, Jamie, and others are out there participating in meaningful ways and contributing to the conversation. At the same time, OSPI must continue to grow its membership. It's essential to grow our membership to enhance our strong position as leaders in solving the issues facing Ontarians. We simply can't be everything to everyone. We have to use our resources intelligently and participate, offering key strategic direction at optimum times is what I think we have to do.
Thank you, Ray. Jane?
Yeah, I totally agree with what's been said by Sarah and then Ray around, you know, the ideal things that we need to do, and then the reality of how we would go about doing this as a small organization. We like OSPI has already really got involved with the advocacy about looking at engineering jobs, engineering wages, looking at, you know, how to help, I guess, navigate some of the headwinds that we're experiencing right now. And one of the other areas that OSPI can contribute to as well is being able to encourage government to, you know, look at different trade agreements, different opportunities to get Canadian homegrown businesses versus relying on importing from the US or other countries. And OSPI can help by sort of identifying the industries and the areas where there is skilled people, skilled engineers in Ontario, and where the engineering jobs are most threatened. So I think, you know, that's where OSPI is helping and can continue to help in this area.
Thank you, Jane. And the last word on this question goes to Sandra.
So yes, we've got huge challenges, but we're engineers and we love a good problem to solve. And where there's challenges, there's always opportunities. And, you know, as Ray already mentioned, OSPI's already well positioned on this trade commission. And we've already talked about, you know, providing training and upskilling services for upskilling training for engineers to potentially pivot in their careers. You know, additionally, I see there's work to be done in removing barriers to improve accessibility to markets across Canada, similar to what's being done in other industry areas. And this, you know, I believe the same can be applied to professional engineers, and OSPI would be could support enabling legislation to allow engineers to conduct licensed work across Canada and opening more doors for our engineers. We can continue to ensure that the engineering voice is represented at government policy discussions that impact engineers. And another thing, you know, we can do is emphasize Buy Ontario to promote Ontario engineers, as companies requiring engineering services are going to be looking more within Canada to source their expertise. You know, lastly, it's a great time to take advantage of changes in market purchasing powers to advertise the quality of Ontario engineers and the role of engineers in our economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. So our next question continues down the economic chaos gauntlet, and it begins with John. And it's, what effects on the Ontario engineering profession do you foresee resulting from the US's Trump's tariffs?
So all the companies I've worked for had specific directives for the sales team to avoid counting on a large tranche of revenue from a single customer or a single region. And they worked very hard to avoid ending up in that situation. I think as a province, the US market has been good to us and vice versa, but that's now changing. So this requires Ontario to find new markets, new customers, and an important factor will be transport. right? It's no longer simply a case of loading up a truck or a train and heading south to deliver raw materials and finished goods. We need to build new transportation networks, pipelines, corridors, with Ontario engineers, answering that call. Ontario engineers will also be needed to develop the products and services that were formerly imported, but now through tariffs or other barriers need to be produced locally. Not only build them, but make sure they're available and cost effective, or viable alternatives are there. So adjusting to these rapid and unforeseen changes creates a great opportunity for engineers, but some short-term hardship. However, having a diversified customer base supported by new infrastructure and specialized Ontario-made goods and services will eventually bring long-term prosperity.
Thank you, John. Over to Inga.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. So we already talked, I guess, about the economic turbulence of potentially, certain sectors being affected while others, might be rising. I want to talk about the growing external political economic pressures that we're seeing is a growing political will to reduce interprovincial trade barriers of goods and services. Okay. And as we've heard, provinces are actively looking into ways to reduce those or eliminate even those barriers. We are in a very large populated province that will have actually a very big say here and will be largely affected. But if a direction comes in for national solutions, we will need to bind together with the other provinces and territories to come up, work towards those solutions. So again, I guess advocating for how our Ontario engineers can play a key role in executing the government strategy is going to be really key, because we are more than willing to assist. As new sectors potentially might be becoming prominent, okay, there might be a requirement or will be a requirement to invest in new educational and training programs for engineers, as well as networking events. Perhaps a direction might require us to streamline licensing for IEGs in Canada to come in and help work in some of these industries, right? So, and again, presenting us Ontario engineers as being able to support that government, direction will be key. Okay. I think I mentioned in the other answer, advocating for the expansion of other industries that need engineers, critical minerals, natural resources, AI, battery R&D, etc. More importantly, there might be a need for national solutions that might include streamlining of provincial licensing of professionals, okay, be it in the medical healthcare area, perhaps engineers, and we will need to be at the table if that's the direction that comes in, to make sure that we're looking, at the interest of Ontario engineers while trying to address what the direction is from the government.
Thank you, Inga. Ray.
Okay, so I agree with everything that everyone has said on this topic, but the threat of tariffs has actually coalesced Canadian unity like no other time in our history. The federal and provincial governments have agreed to remove the trade barriers across Canada, some say by July 1st. Clearly, there's an urgency to this. So what does that mean for OSPI and the engineering community in Ontario? OSPI will have to determine our position, and as our advocate, protect our rights, our interests, to be our voice in any negotiations which dramatically might affect our continued well-being. It's been said before, but it needs to be restated. This is a tremendous opportunity. Canada has never been as united it is now. Elbows up, we're in it. So we can fight, we can find the solutions.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Jane.
Yeah, I mean, most of it's been said. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of points that I do think that it is, an opportunity. I mean, it's not going to always be great. There will be some suffering. People will lose jobs. There will be industries that are really hurt. Like it's going to be a really challenging time for Canada. Absolutely no doubt. But if we can take this pain and work really, really hard, I think we'll come out of it way stronger, because we never should have got ourselves into the situation that we're in when we're totally dependent on the US. we haven't developed our military, we haven't developed our industries, we haven't developed robust trading partners. Like, you just sort of look at where you are, and John alluded to that. You, as a business, you wouldn't have allowed yourself to get into this situation. How did we let ourselves get into that? And we just sort of took easy street, and now this is what's happened. So I do feel like, for engineers in particular, people who are willing to change, to pivot, to learn new skills, to be able to develop develop new industries, lead, this is going to be a really exciting time for Ontario engineers.
Thank you, Jane. Next is Sandra.
So for the engineering profession itself, it's not just the tariff, it's a package deal with the political climate in the US right now. So this isn't just, it's going to challenge engineers to stretch our ingenuity. I see it as an opportunity to be part of a process to finding creative solutions and alternatives for sectors, individuals, services, equipment, and supplies that are impacted by the tariffs. I foresee a Buy Ontario, Buy Canadian push for engineering services that will be led by Canadian companies and governments looking to invest in Canada. Ontario and Canadian engineers and engineering services will also be more attractive to international companies looking to divest of US options. I also see graduate engineers looking to stay in Canada instead of moving to the US to work or complete their graduate studies. And I expect there will be a reverse brain drain of engineers from the US coming into Canada. So from that perspective, I see these engineers will be actually strengthening our engineering economy in Ontario. And, we need to convince them to join OSPI. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And the last word goes to Sarah.
Yes. So again, a lot of good points have already been mentioned. So I do believe that US tariffs will have an impact in engineering projects in Ontario, and that's by increasing the cost of the materials, equipment. It will cause project delays, supply chain disruptions ultimately, and then potentially job reductions. And that's why my previous comment was all around trying to support engineers that potentially may have job insecurity. However, all that to be said, I also agree, elbows up, actually sleeves up for all of us. It's an opportunity for innovation where engineers can play a key role in helping Ontario and ultimately Canada diversify its supply chain, trade partners, improve domestic production capabilities. So by fostering that kind of more resilient supply chain, I think we can reduce a lot of dependencies on the external sources. And again, all of that has been said, but that's really what I saw as the impact.
Thank you, Sarah. So our next question, we're changing themes now, and we're going to start with Inga. And it is, do you believe that it is important to provide support for limited licensees?
So I'm just going to prelude and answer yes and provide my explanation. We've been talking about how OSPI's doors are open to not only PNGs, okay? And Jane mentioned that PNG is not the bread and butter for OSPI. However, the explanation here is someone who has received a limited license is a person who has dedicated at least 8 years to specialize, to get experience and competence in a specific area of professional engineering. They've done this through an accredited process to gain that experience. They did this under the supervision of a PNG. And PEO has granted them this limited license, stating that they can conduct professional engineer work in this well-defined area. Therefore, to me, the fact that they are conducting this work, engineering work, and they have shown the desire to be a part of the engineering community is, rationale of why they need to be included and represented by OSPI at the board.
Thank you, Inga. Next to Ray.
All right, can I just say agree? Let me say that I strongly believe OSPI's role is to be the advocate for the entire engineering community. And it's quite appropriate to provide support for limited license holders, meaning that if they join OSPI. But all regulatory matters belong to PEO. And once PEO has given them accreditation, we support all members of the engineering community.
Thank you, Ray. Next up is Jane.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I need to add anything.
Great. Sandra.
I don't believe I have anything to add. I think we should welcome them, as long as they join us with respect as a member, yes. So I think from
Yes.
that perspective, I guess I should add, for that perspective, I think that if it's something that we want to look seriously at, we should have the staff present the pros and the cons and include and identify any risk, if there are any, before we make a decision, a final decision. So, but overall supportive.
Thank you, Sandra. Sarah, anything to add?
So fully supportive, and I would say actually, especially for this time, with the economic turbulence, it helps with even potentially with interprovincial mobility, with engineers having to go to different places or different parts of the country, and having more of them come to Ontario and help, that would be actually very helpful.
Thank you. And the last word goes to John.
Yeah, I mean, OSPI should welcome all engineers at various stages of their career, and that includes limited license holders. So I fully agree.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, we'll start with Ray, and it's, do you believe that it would be important to have an accredited, recognized bridging program carried out by OSPI for international graduate engineers to address the lack of Canadian experience? And if so, why?
Great. On this question, I can speak with quite some depth of knowledge. 20 years ago, I was a senior engineer looking to deliver a very aggressive program. There simply weren't the qualified engineers available to assist me in attaining my goal. OSPI at that time had a program through which the foreign trained engineers could get some work experience with employers like me, allowing them to get the necessary work hours under the supervision of PEngs so as to work towards meeting the PEO work experience requirements towards licensure. In my particular case, I hired 4 individuals I agreed to support through this program. They were doing survival jobs. They were taxi drivers. They were security guards. What a waste of human capacity, ability, and desire to work in their chosen profession. I can tell you today that these 4 individuals continue to be employed with my former organization, a tribute to the individuals, to the open-minded employer, and to the OSPI program. We are in dire need of qualified professionals in our engineering community. It's up to PEO to determine licensing requirements, as we stated earlier. OSPI, in partnership with the government, can certainly support individuals who are seeking self-improvement, working towards licensure. We need all the help we can get.
Thank you, Ray. Jane? You're on mute. You're on mute, Jane.
I'm sorry. So my only thing about the EIT program is that is a PEO program, and they have disbanded it. But my understanding is that they're going to review to see if they put something else in place coming up this spring, like in April. So although I think we should totally support all of the engineering community in terms, like I wasn't exactly sure of the question, like if we're saying, should we put the specific program together, we'd have to really discuss what is the regulator's job versus OSPI's job.
Yeah, and the question in this case was around helping internationally trained or graduate engineers obtain Canadian experience.
Oh, sorry. I was on the wrong question. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So in terms of getting the internationally trained, I think we jumped a little bit on because we're running out of time here. So in terms of getting the internationally trained students specific work, then I think that we can help and support through OSPE. And we've already got a lot as an OSPE member. They can definitely join and we can help and support. And I think we already do that.
Thank you, Jane. The next up is Sandra.
So did the question not have an aspect of accredited recognized bridging program, or did that question change?
No, it does. It's so I can reread it.
Okay,
It's the,
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I agree with what's been said, and I believe that we should give our full support to internationally trained engineering. We desperately need them, and they're being underutilized, as we've already talked about. With respect to actually having an accredited, recognized bridging program carried out by OSPE, from my perspective, I see that every internationally trained engineer is going to have different gaps in their experience or education, will have different needs in order to meet licensing requirements in Ontario. So I believe it's important for OSPE to offer initiatives that support engineering, internationally trained engineers and help them in their path to licensure. PEO, as we've already stated, licenses engineers and determines what standards, including education and experience, must be met to obtain a license. So I agree that OSPE could work with PEO and their licensing committee to determine if there are common elements amongst internationally trained engineers that apply who apply for licensure, and which could be filled through a curated set of offerings. OSPE is well positioned through our engineering academy to facilitate any training and offer a curated package of courses that result in some sort of certificate that could help internationally trained engineers work through the process of accreditation. Whether that fully bridges the requirements of licensure is fully up to PEO.
Thank you, Sandra. Sarah?
So absolutely, I also agree. I've seen many friends and acquaintances who are internationally trained engineers, and they have had to start from scratch. And then a structured bridging program, not just from the engineering side of thing. I see also even just I would say there are nuances in the workplace culture that I think we could help them with. I interview a number of internationally trained engineers when they come through, and sometimes I do find it's just the way they even have structured their resumes, or like how they are presenting themselves. There are nuances that are different, and sometimes HR just eliminates them. So there are various ways that I think we can help, not just getting them accredited to be engineers, but also helping them integrate faster in our workforce. And that helps all of us, because the more we can retain, the more we could really succeed. So.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
Yeah, I mean, the need is definitely there. There's no question. I agree with Sandra, though. I think it's kind of a loaded question because of all of the variety of use cases that need to be dealt with, right? So I think there's a way to work through it. I think by working with PEO to come up with sort of a minimal set to see where OSPE can create something that's not too bespoke, but that can benefit a large group of internationally trained engineers to move towards licensure. I think there's an opportunity there. I also think about all of the co-op students that I've hired over the years, many who were foreign students, really with a focus on gaining work experience to round out their education. I think there might be an opportunity to explore some similar type of arrangement, as Ray alluded to, in partnership with the employers. So I think there's definitely some things that can be done there, but the details have to be worked out.
Thank you, John. And the last word goes to Inga.
I too agree that some kind of a program that Ray talked about would have been beneficial. My own mom, who's an IEG with a master's degree in engineering, chose not to pursue PEng because she needed to support her family, and that's definitely a tough decision to make back then. So any sort of what we're talking about, co-op programs, opportunities for IEGs to get those working experiences would be really key. What I wanted to mention is that the actual licensing process takes 2 to 4 years for IEGs through PEO. So I do see even, continuing discussions through OSPE Could we streamline this process more? Does it take 3 to 4 months to get results from an exam that are written only twice a year? Okay. The 18 months to sometimes get a response on your CBA. Okay. So that needs to be streamlined as well. And I think OSPI can play a role in addition to, I truly believe that the response times to even get a Canadian graduated engineer are too long. I know I'm throwing this in, but I do believe we're losing some potential members, for PO and OSPI who are stepping away and choosing not to pursue their PN.
Thank you, Inga. So we're on to our last question of the evening, and we'll begin with Jane. And it's, how can OSPI help address the housing crisis so that the next generation can afford a home to live and grow in?
So I think that this is another area that OSPI has been really involved in. There has been, a lot of advocacy from OSPI, and some of the results of this work is reflected in the 2024 Ontario budget, where there was $1 billion for municipal housing. There was an increase in the Housing Enabled Water Systems Fund. There's definitely work by OSPI happening on promoting sustainable engineering practices, where there's been quite a big impact. So there's other things that they can do to help, which is things like expanding engineering innovation and housing construction, helping to address skilled trade shortages, because that's definitely an issue, like just to, point out where some of the gaps are, like where OSPI members can be part of this creative problem solving. For example, this is a perfect role for our task forces that we have at OSPI, where, like a group of people who are within this industry can come together with their solutions and really get connected with their appropriate counterparts within government and really influence it. And although there's always work to be done, I do feel that this is an area that OSPI has been very active in. So I'm not exactly sure where the line of questioning is coming from, but I think, yes, they have been active and should continue to be active. And I see it in the role of the task force.
Well, thank you, Jane. Sandra?
So I agree with everything that Jane said. So in an effort to wrap up this evening, I don't have anything to add to it.
Thank you, Sandra. Sarah?
I'll add something quick because I am on the board of a small business that does home improvements, and they try to increase housing on a very small level. And I would say that one of the areas is the missing middle, and those are the housing complexes that are 8 to 12 story highs. But usually it's so expensive for the builders or like for engineers that they don't want to get involved with them. So I think as OSPI, we could push for policies that can increase zoning density, allowing quicker conversion of those single family homes into energy efficient mid-rise buildings without really breaking the banks for the engineers and those engineering projects. I think there's a little bit of maybe smaller projects that we could think about advocating for, and not just always those billion-dollar projects that we are talking about.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff has been said. I don't have too much to add. I think maybe one other example, particularly here in Ottawa, as the COVID experience has caused the federal government, which owns and leases many properties, to shrink its office space by moving to a hybrid type of working model, has raised questions, hey, can these office buildings be converted into apartments or other forms of housing? And I think who's going to make that decision? There's multiple players, but I think OSPI can encourage feasibility studies of this and take the learnings from those feasibility studies to help make other similar decisions as part of a means to address the housing shortage.
Thank you, John. Inga?
So I agree. The Sustainable Cities Task Force at OSPI is already looking at, how the dwellings and communities can be constructed to make sure that they are operated in a sustainable and less costly way in the future. But in addition to, we need to keep looking at these construction designs, materials, and processes. Just because of my work, CSA is very much involved in standards for new technologies. Okay, so that's what I want to bring up. There are some that are still, let's call them not a fully baked loaf. They're starting up. We have, we perhaps have standards such as modular construction. However, some of these adoptions are not picking up as quickly, and therefore there's a need to keep looking at the policies and advocating for the technologies after those are defined.
Thank you, Inga. And the last word goes to Ray.
Okay, thanks. Everything, how could I disagree with? But we have task forces at OSPI. It's not the board's role to venture into the areas that many of the very areas that have been raised. We identify a problem. We bring the necessary experts together through the various task forces which exist and will continue to exist and grow to solve the problems of the day. So that was my suggested course of action, given the magnitude of the problem, that we continue using our task forces efficiently and prudently.
Thank you all. And that concludes the lightning round. And so now we're going to go to the closing remarks.
That was some lightning. That was some lightning.
It was a thunderstorm, Ray. Big thunderstorm. So I'm rebranding this the elevator pitch. So you're on the elevator with our members. You have 1 minute. This is your last chance to tell them on why to vote for you. We'll start with Sarah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about my vision for OSPI. Engineers have the expertise to shape policy, industry, and innovation. Yet too often we are underrepresented in key decisions that impact our profession and Ontario and Canada's future. OSPI has a crucial role to play in elevating our influence, strengthening advocacy, and ensuring engineers are at the forefront of solutions for challenges like economic uncertainty, climate change, energy, and job security. I bring experience in policy, governance, and strategic leadership, along with a deep passion for empowering engineers. If elected, I will work to expand OSPI's impact, grow membership, and ensure our profession is seen, heard, and valued at the highest levels. I appreciate your support and look forward to serving you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. John?
I guess to close, I'd like to share a personal story. When I was young, I did a lot of camping and hunting with my father. And on one trip, I was put in charge of gathering the firewood. So I brought back a lot of dried pine branches and small twigs. My rationale being that, the pine would flare up and produce tall flames, and the twigs are easy to break and add to the fire. But my father bundled together a bunch of twigs and asked me to break them, and I couldn't. And then he added the pine branches to the fire. They did flare up quickly, but after a few seconds, the fire died out with no residual heat or flame. So in hindsight, these takeaways, I think, are not only personal learnings for me, but things that are necessary to be applied to the imperative for successful board moving forward with the plan. First of all, strengthen numbers. We talked about membership, and I think that is a key aspect of delivering on OSPI's mission. Next, the importance of focusing on long-term solutions instead of quick fixes. That is going to guide the policy and the strategic plan, which went from 3 years to 5 years. I believe these humble learnings, along with my other skills and experiences, will allow me to support OSPI's mission and capably serve the engineering community and its stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Inga?
First, I want to congratulate everybody. We had a wonderful, engaging discussion, which makes it evident to all the OSPI members how much all we are passionate about our profession and, elevating its importance in the society. For my closing statement, I just want to emphasize how much I am looking forward to contributing my professional network, experiences, diverse skills to advance and grow the wonderful work that OSPI and its members are doing. by participating on OSPI's task forces, advisory committee for PO, U of T's engineering faculty and alumni committee. I continue to already take those steps. I am, of course, grateful for the opportunities I was privy to as a professional engineer in Canada. My personal drive is to leave a positive legacy for young engineers like my daughter, for the engineers who I have and I am mentoring. I want to inspire the next level of engineering leaders through my involvement here, especially women and minorities, by personally leading as an example. Most importantly, policy development, diverse stakeholder management, and advocacy that I conduct as part of my regular work at CSA have helped me prepare to do the same for OSPI and the engineering community. I would be very honored to be elected to serve on the OSPI board. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. Ray?
Thank you. We have on the board, we have, with the input of all members across the OSPI, we have developed the next 5-year strategic plan. In order to deliver on that 5-year plan, which is very simple, straightforward, and key to our sustainability and our ability to advocate on all others, we have to grow our membership so that we are financially able to carry out all of the wonderful things that we spoke about here this evening. We have invested significantly in developing the Learning Academy. I see that as a wise investment, and I think that will be an essential ingredient on our ability to grow that membership that I think is crucial. For the last 2 years, I've been your treasurer, bringing my experience in fiduciary knowledge and responsibility. I have decades of board experience and leadership, and I'd be honored to continue serving as a board member.
Thank you, Ray. Jane?
Hello. I think the benefit that the OSPI membership would have for me to continue on the board is just that it takes a little bit of time when you first get elected to the board to actually go through the learning curve of understanding the operation of the board, the key issues. And I feel at this point that I'm really up to speed and able to continue the work that's already been started in terms of the strategic plan, which I was involved with, as I mentioned, as well as the AI and alternative emerging technologies emphasis. And the third part is really expanding the market that we can go after for OSPI memberships, which is, not just the PENGs, which of course we would want and has always been the bread and butter, but expanding that to represent the whole engineering community. I have a really strong marketing background. I actually ran a marketing agency for 11 years. So in that sense, I'd be able to really help with some of the oversight and key metrics that would be required to ensure that OSPI does grow that membership. So I'd like to continue if my skills are needed as part of the OSPI board. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Sandra?
I would be honored to continue to serve our profession as a member of the OSPI Board of Directors. I am dedicated to the profession. My pledge to you, our members, is to continue to work to improve the relevancy and importance of the profession, to support modernization of our profession, support diversity, and find creative ways to grow and market OSPI to increase our membership, and to continue the work towards building stronger, positive, respectful relationships with our sister organization for the delivery of programs. Thank you to everyone today who has taken the time to view this Town Hall All Candidates meeting. It is one of the best ways to maximize our reach across the province. You have a selection of great candidates to choose from to build our board of directors. Thank you for your interest and engagement in our profession. Dave, you've done a great job moderating this evening. We appreciate your efforts. And thank you as well to staff for making this happen. Good night.
Thank you, Sandra. So this now concludes this evening's discussion. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our candidates for participating in tonight's event. I would also like to thank the members for tuning in and for posing the questions to our candidates. I hope the evening has been informative. This evening's town hall has been recorded and will be posted on our website by tomorrow, end of day. All members in good standing should have received their election packages by email on Monday, March 24th. All voting for the OSPI board elections is done online and is extremely easy. Please take the time to vote. You have a great slate of candidates. Polls are now open, and I will remain open until 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 14th. All election information can be found on OSPI's website, ospe.on.ca. Thank you and have a good night.
Good night.